Hi, my name is Tony Tracy and I'm the president of the Pitch Factory. On this particular blog, we're going to discuss the question, does a template approach to proposals and presentations stifle creativity? This is a conversation that I had with a bid specialist who worked at a professional firm, and they argued that templates undermined creativity, and I argued that they didn't, and I'd like to explain why. Their argument was driven from the perspective that every opportunity is unique. It's impractical to use a template because, by definition, it won't answer a particular client's need. And I think few could argue that this sounds like a coherent argument. At face value, it does almost seem counterintuitive, doesn't it? To suggest that using a template could be better than approaching every opportunity afresh. However, that isn't really the point of the argument. Does using a template inevitably produce an end result that fails to address a client's need? Does using a template produce identical proposals? Or is this simply a gut feel response for an ideal world? Most people would want a customized approach if somebody was presenting to them, rather than some kind of standard proposal. So they naturally side with the argument that a creative approach is better. I think in the real world, a clue as to whether the creative approach stacks up can be found in what the bid team do first whenever they get a new opportunity. The first thing they do is they reach for the last proposal and they start editing. And they do that because it's always easier editing something that was previously written than it is to start from scratch. I think in terms of the client, one of the motivations, if you like, for starting from scratch is also that you are tired with the proposals that you've written previously. You need to update them and refresh them. And I think it's always worth remembering that the new client, hasn't seen any of the previous proposals. So whatever they receive from you, they're going to see as though it was fresh for the first time. Is there a difference then between a template approach and starting from the last proposal? Or are they both the same thing? And actually I think there are differences, and I think there are reasons why templates are better. If you think about the information that goes into a proposal, proposals contain many things. They contain descriptions about business activities, about services and products, track record, the history of the firm, as well as standard information such as procedures and policies and facts about the number of employees that you have and where you're located around the world, etc. And some of this information, or some or all of this information, may be relevant to the next proposal. And in fact, if you are using a template that contains this information, it stands to reason that you only probably need to make some minor edits to it to just turn it so that it's most appropriate to answer what the client's asked you to. The challenge actually with relation to information is, for the bid team, is really about selection. It's what to include and it's what to leave out. So if you start from the last proposal, what you may find is that it doesn't contain some of the information that you now need. And that gives you really two choices. One of them is to write it from scratch, and the second is to try and hunt down a proposal that you've done before that contained that information, both of which take time. I think the other thing I'd say about that approach is that giving the bid team broad brush editing rights to rewrite business information is not a good idea, and I don't think it's something that the pitch team should be doing at all. It's not good practice for everyone to have a go at describing what your business is and what it does. And having descriptions of your products and services in proposals that are different to the way you talk about them on a website or in brochures or other communications, undermines the brand. It's likely to confuse the client. And I think you run the risk, of course, as well, of the descriptions not being accurate or well written. A far better practice is to provide bid writers with copy that's well written, so they can choose what they need and copy and paste what they want to into the new proposal. And that, in a way, is exactly what templates are for. I think another difference is in writing approach. It's faster and easier to attune something, some standard information to a client's needs than it is to edit a document that's been written for a different client, perhaps who has very different needs. The mindset of a template editor is really quite straightforward. You take the content that's provided, you cut out what you don't need, and therefore you go on to adapt what remains until you've finished explaining, to the client why they should pick you instead of somebody else. I think if you edit a previously written proposal for a particular client, unless they have identical needs, then you've got to do a number of things. The first is you've got to find out what are the gaps, so what's missing that you need to now find and include, as we mentioned earlier. The second thing, of course, is that the information that is in there that you do need might well have been edited and changed for the previous client. So you need to make sure that whatever's being said makes sense for the client you're writing for now. And then, of course, then you've got to really take a view as to what you need to say in order to answer the particular client's questions. And this three-stage process inevitably is longer, more time-consuming, and it also requires a lot of proofreading, because you've got to make sure that the new document does not contain any previous client references, acronyms or names or anything else that give the game away to your new client. If you take a template approach and you're thinking, well, the template approach sounds like a one-size-fits-all, then it absolutely isn't. And the idea of a template is to provide the core information that you need as a starting point, a head start every time. And that means you could have templates for particular sectors, products and services already there waiting for you. I think the final point and final difference is a question really of control. And this is in particular in respect of policies and procedures. Companies of all shapes and sizes have processes to help manage quality. That's really what they're for. And some of them, of course, are created internally, but others aren't. Some may well be in response to regulation, to the law, to various industry bodies or accreditation organisations and so on. So the question I think to ask is, in respect of pitch documents, is whether it's acceptable for the bid team to have the right to rewrite these internal processes or change them in any way, or whether they should leave them alone. Now, the question here, of course, is how much you can do to stop them from editing and changing things, and that depends on the software platforms you use. If you're using Microsoft PowerPoint and Word, then you don't really have any control over what people do, unless you check obviously everything before it goes out. If you use a platform like Factoria, the system that we offer, then you can lock content down so that users cannot change it, and therefore you can be confident that some aspects of a proposal document will go out exactly as the company wants them to, and so on. So in summary, for a number of reasons, I'm going to argue that templates provide the best, the most consistent, the most controlled, and the fastest route to responding to an opportunity. And I think that's true provided the rules allow users the necessary flexibility to make sure they can edit content so they answer the questions that the clients want them to. And if that's the case, I don't think templates in any way stifle creativity. In fact, actually I think the reverse is true, because I think if you start from 80% or whatever percent of your document already existing that you can begin to edit, and you know what you can and what you can't change, you will save time, and that time can be better spent focusing on trying to put together the most compelling proposal.